On this week's episode, we have a special guest joining us from the Ubuntu Summit, and that is Mark Shuttleworth. He's going to be joining us for his second interview on the show. And for those who don't know, I'm very close friends with Mark Shuttleworth, as we've talked about in the interview on the show. Also, I met him again at the Ubuntu Summit. We just hung out for hours and hours and besties. I call him Spaceman, but you can call him Mark. It's anyway. So welcome to episode 353 of Destination Linux, your favorite video podcast. My name is Michael.
I'm Jill.
And I'm Ryan.
We're also going to be covering our tips, tricks, and software picks and all that sort of stuff on this episode. So let's get this show on the road toward Destination Linux.
This week, I didn't pull the community feedback from our vault of emails because I saw something on Reddit that it was such a good question. I had to bring it here, especially for the New Year's episode. Thought it was a great question that was posted because we haven't talked about it in a little while. We've covered this on prior episodes way back when. But the question,
remember last week when you were bearing the lead?
Shut up, Michael. The question is, what are your reasons for using Linux? And
that's a really good question. Okay.
By Yumi FMB. And the reason why I like this question is because we have so many interviews where we discover how people found Linux. And a lot of people who've been in Linux for a long time, I've picked up on some themes. A lot of them came across it in the Linux magazines, where it came with the free CD and things.
Right.
A lot of people were in college. They were students trying to find alternatives, something that didn't cost as much as Unix or other operating systems out there at the time. But they go on to mention that they see people mention Linux for use for weaker hardware, people who can't afford Windows, and of course, privacy and security. But then when you go into the comments, there's a lot of other things. And I thought that was interesting too, because remember, one of the things I wanted to do with my personal YouTube channel was show that, hey, Linux can run on the latest and greatest hardware, because I had picked up on the fact that everyone just said, hey, if you have a computer that's old and dying, you can revive it with Linux. But I'm like, Linux is more than that. Linux is for the most powerful hardware too. I mean, it runs on 100% of all the supercomputers. If
all of them,
maybe
all of them, yeah,
all of them now, because it used to be like 99.9. Now it's like purely.
It's like 100% of the top 500 supercomputers. I don't think they count. They check everything, but definitely all the ones that make much of a difference.
Make the news,
and also that runs the International Space Station and most of NASA.
Design Crocs.
Yeah, and I mean, we don't know that for sure, but probably.
Yeah.
Yep. So the comments section, I kind of perused through all the comments. There was lots of great comments in there, people telling their stories. And I found some really interesting ones that I wanted to share. The first one is, it's the best for programming, which I thought was really cool. A lot of the IDE options we have, a lot of great programming tools, and it's out of your way, right? Unlike
and also
Windows,
support for languages is pretty much completely universal, like almost every language,
Yeah.
And easy to install Python.
Yeah. When you think about using Windows or something, you've got all these like ads popping up, or you open and you get pre-installed Candy Crush and all this junk distractions and things, because who can avoid that? Solitaire. In Linux, it's just, you can get distraction-free workspace. You can customize it, make it your own.
How dare you diss Solitaire?
I thought you were going to say Candy Crush, because that game when it first came out was dope. I don't care what you say.
I mean, sure.
Matching jelly beans. I mean,
sure, you say so.
Amazing.
Yeah. Okay.
Another one is KDE. I thought you'd like this, Michael. That is much more powerful than Windows Desktop, which is Arrow. And
that's true.
I don't think we can argue with that.
Yeah.
Linux and things that run on Linux pay my bills.
I love that one.
I like that
one. So this is not just a hobby for a lot of people. You can make your living. You can have your entire career based on Linux and working for some amazing companies out there. We talked about the open source in some of our interviews with DreamWorks and things. So there are a lot of companies out there.
Last week we talked about what they DreamWorks open source their rendering system, like the redistribution system as well. Like it's crazy. Like it's everywhere, open source and Linux is everywhere. And also we talked about, like, on the DreamWorks interview, that they use Linux to basically do everything. So there's so many reasons that Linux is dominant. But there's also one that a lot of people love, and that is the customization that you can do with Linux. Because
you mentioned that,
right? Not just customizing the desktop or the wallpaper, you can basically morph it into whatever you want. You can make it look like Windows. You can make it look like Mac. You can make it function mostly like
You
everything.
do those 3D window box things that people use sometimes.
The desktop cube.
Yeah, desktop cube. Yeah.
The funny thing is that
the cube is back.
Unfortunately, the desktop cube got removed in a certain version of KDE, but in the next version of KDE, it is coming back. So you don't have to worry about not having the cube. It's going to return.
Yes.
The future is nigh. Yeah.
That's not what that means. That means it's ending.
Oh, the future is now. Yes.
Speaking of the future is now. GNOME extension as well.
Oh, there you go. The GNOME extension have your little 3D desktop.
Wait, hold on. What does nigh mean?
I don't know. It was the nigh before Christmas.
It was the nigh? Oh, it's what horses do.
That's nay.
Man, you thought we'd get smarter in 2024, and you were wrong. All right,
you were wrong because we recorded this early. So,
the lots of hate for Windows was also a big part of why people left. A lot of people just did not like Windows where Windows was going, where it's gone with the metadata, all of those things. And my favorite one is when I turn it on, it works and is exactly how I left it. So that
Rock
to
stable.
me is a very good reason to use Linux, right?
That is awesome. Also, by the way, nigh means just soon.
See?
Yeah.
The future is soon. You're
That's
the
true.
one who's dummy.
The future is always soon. That's because it's called the future. You can't.
I want to Candy Crush your face for interrupting me with your nonsense.
We don't have enough jelly beans for that.
Okay. So we want to hear your feedback on this. What are some of the reasons you chose Linux? Write us and let us know. Go to tuxdigital.com/contact. You can help out the show by creating content for the show by sending in your emails, your suggestions, your thoughts on that. We'd love to hear from you.
Yes, help us do our jobs. Sending us content.
That's not how to say it, Michael.
No,
okay. They're being a part of the show, not helping us do
being a part of the show.
It's an honor
also
to be
give
included.
us content, but of course, part of the show.
And don't put in there, especially Jill, at the end. We know you love Jill, especially. Like we've covered that.
You can say especially Jill, Michael, and Ryan. If you want to put all of us, it's fine. It's fine as long as
if you want to just exclude Michael, you can. But
or if you want to exclude Ryan, it's okay too. Just make sure
both. All right.
We need to make that T-shirt, especially Jill. Yes,
that is a
check the store soon.
Aww.
It's coming.
Yes,
I like that one.
This episode is brought to you by NameCheap. Now, NameCheap is where we go to get all of our domains. And if you know anything about Michael, who's responsible for our domains, there's a lot of them. There's like a lot. And NameCheap is a fantastic place to go and get the domains you need to start your new business and start it cheaply. You can get URLs, you can do self-hosting, you can have WordPress set up for you, or you can just get the domain itself and set all that stuff up elsewhere. They have all kinds of options, whether you're a blogger, small business owner, you have big dreams on the internet. Well, Namecheap is the place to check out. So head to destinationlinux.net/Namecheap to get started and check out all the options that you have for starting your next big business or even small business or blog or whatever it is. It's all there.
Whether you have a big idea or the next big business, the price is not big at Namecheap.
So now it's time to hear Mark Shuttleworth's interview with Michael. No, Michael's interview with Mark. Does he interview you at all here? Does he ask you any questions?
He does actually ask me questions, not necessarily relevant to how you. It's not an interview of me, but he did ask me some questions, which was cool. We had a nice conversation. We're best pals, and we're on a first name basis, and also I call him Spaceman. We have this cute nickname I have. Do
you guys wear shirts BFF with the arrow, and he has the other arrow, and when you walk beside?
No, of course not. That's weird.
Not yet.
No. We just have one where it's kind of like you have like a long sleeve shirt that's like, it's like a monkey arm that goes across it. So when you hook it, it's like this when you put the shirts combined to make the picture. That's what it's for. So
have you seen the magnet socks where they have little ears on the ends of your socks, and then when you get close, they have magnets in them and they connect to show your best friends? It's a thing.
I have never heard of this.
Yeah, you can get some very annoying socks with Shuttleworth.
That sounds like the absolute worst experience when you put it into the dryer and it gets stuck in the dryer and you can't find it because it's like stuck inside this weird crevice or something with a magnet. Okay. Sure.
It's going to be amazing.
But,
going to be amazing.
You know, in all seriousness, we are best friends. And you can check out this new great interview that's coming up right now. So here it is.
Roll
Enjoy.
the tape.
Roll that tape. Roll that beautiful bean footage. Welcome to a special interview. You might have recognized the person sitting next to me. It's Mark Shuttleworth of Canonical, and I have quite a few questions, so thank you very much for joining me. So first of all, for those who don't know, maybe like the three people in the world who's watching this, could you introduce yourself to the audience and let us know what your role is at Canonical?
I am Mark Shuttleworth. I'm the founder of Ubuntu and Canonical, and I am the self-appointed benevolent dictator for life in Ubuntu. I'm delighted to say that these days, mostly that involves supporting the amazing people that ran the summit and the amazing people that ran the event we held last week and the one we'll hold next week. There are now lots of people who are really leaders of Ubuntu, and I'm just a cheerleader. And I run Canonical, so I pull the threads of how we build the business and a customer base, and how we build a community and an open platform, and how we enable other communities. I try and pull all of those threads together and find a balance in the force.
Nice. So for those who weren't able to watch the Destination Linux podcast, you can get a full interview with Mark on that. I'll have it linked in the show notes. But so we're not going to go into the full interview because that would take like an hour or so, or I think it was longer. Sorry about that. But so first of all, let's talk about the Ubuntu Summit. What was your favorite part about the summit?
There was a great talk about snapshot.ubuntu.com. So the archive is where all of the packages, the Debian packages are that make up Ubuntu. And it's continuously evolving because security and new stuff. But sometimes there's good reasons for people to say, hey, I've got 1,500 VMs in a cloud and I want them all to have packages up to exactly the same moment in time, right? Mm-hmm. And then to be able to move that estate, say a week or a month, and with perfect control, rather than having stuff coming at you from us randomly, it comes at you kind of when you want it. So that's a cool new capability, and it was interesting to hear about the engineering behind that, and then also how some big people like Azure and other people are using that to then build their own services and roll out kind of security updates in a more controlled kind of way.
Nice. Yeah, I like that. So when it comes to the summits and going to conferences, there's always a problem of conflict between a talk that you want to watch and another talk that you at the exact same time. How many times did it happen to you this time?
So I tend to be a lurker at the back so that I can pop in and pop out. But yes, there were a couple of cases where I needed to be in two places at once and had to toss a coin. But usually the problem is you go to the first one and it's so interesting that you kind of miss the other one.
Yeah, that's true. That happened to me a couple times. Yeah. I even tried to go in and out with some footage, and still sometimes they just suck me into the conversation, or the talk is so interesting that I can't leave. Yeah. So I totally get what you're saying. So we did a review of 23.10 in a previous episode of Destination Linux, and I'm still running it because I just liked it so much on my laptop. So there's a lot of really clear improvements to the desktop experience of Ubuntu 23.10. And much more so than just the past couple of releases. So I'm curious, it seems as though Ubuntu is now focusing more on the desktop than previously. Yeah. So is that a fair assessment?
In reality, the desktop is a labor of love. I also consider it really important for our social mission, right? Linux for human beings. Human beings aren't necessarily developers. They aren't necessarily, right? So it's always been kind of like a first love. It's also like explicitly part of our social mission. And I also think it's really important because the sorts of people who invent the future are developers, right? And giving developers a great experience also has always been really, really important. Now, in order to sort of get out of very difficult financial times, 2015, 2016, the opportunity was cloud and the opportunity was enterprise, and essentially building a set of capabilities in Ubuntu and around Ubuntu that will enable people to run their own data centers at scale, run applications better, and deliver things to IoT and so on. So it was a huge amount of work, and it has worked, right? Those things now actually fund a growing Ubuntu engineering team. And that's now allowing us to expand the desktop team. So, the extra, the sense that you have of accelerating improvement is both, I think, a function of having more people doing that, not just in the desktop team, but in the foundation team. Think about better compilers for every language, better runtimes for all of the interpreted languages. If we have more people to drive that, we can just get newer stuff and do it better, faster. Right? And all of that kind of raises the tide in Ubuntu. And the desktop team is really, I think, kind of enjoying that. The other thing that I would point to is that I think Oliver Smith, who's the Ubuntu product manager, has really started engaging in a public conversation around the future of Ubuntu. What should we do? What do people want? What would be meaningful? We've got opinions. Community leaders have opinions, and our users have opinions. And it's just really nice to see how that conversation is taking place in public. Yeah. It means that when something lands in the distro, we know that a bunch of people will be excited about it. A bunch of people will know it's coming. It won't be shock news in the Daily Mail, right? It'll be kind of something that people at least understand the rationale for, even if they didn't necessarily want to agree it. And I think that's really helped create a more focused kind of plan for each interim release, and ultimately, we'll see in April the LTSs.
Speaking of the release for April, it's going to be a LTS, so it's mostly like a polished thing. But if you had something you could put on the wish list for the release, what would that be?
Well, there's really exciting stuff happening in the realm of architectures and languages. So Rust really has come to the fore, and it would be exciting to see key pieces of the platform adopting that platform because of that sort of language, because of the benefits that it brings, both in terms of safety first, but also in terms of better developer experiences for complicated stuff. I think also, we're now working really closely with silicon vendors. For a while, we were building our relationships with cloud vendors.
Right.
Now we're expanding that to go deep with silicon vendors. So really deep with Intel, really deep with NVIDIA. And so what I would hope is that people feel that 2404 is not just an LTS that'll be around for, in fact, at least 12 years. We're now making a 12-year commitment.
Oh, really?
To each LTS. Yeah. And in fact, we're backdating that to older LTSs.
All the ones that are current, or the ones that would kind of make, would it
I don't want to steal somebody else's thunder.
Okay.
But essentially 12 years is what we're going to do for 2404. Wow. And we're going to go back and do that for some of the older ones as well. That is a platinum grade enterprise commitment.
Yeah, that's more than typical enterprise, actually.
I think that matches RHEL.
Okay.
So that matches RHEL.
Okay.
But we do that across a much broader base of software. So, we used to do that just for main. Now we're doing that for the entirety of the distro, right? 30-some thousand source packages.
Wow.
Right? So it's a huge commitment. The security team has grown a tremendous amount. Obviously, some of that is Ubuntu Pro, right? Sure. But the simple fact is that you can now you'll be able to take Ubuntu 2404 and you'll be able to deploy something knowing that you literally can just do apt-get update on a regular basis for the next 12 years. And that stuff is going to be secured.
Wow.
Is going to be maintained. So, but I want to come back to the idea that not only will it be an LTS platform, but it should also give you the latest and greatest. So it should be super optimized for current generation silicon, for latest generation silicon from Intel, from NVIDIA, from Qualcomm, and a bunch of other companies, MediaTek, driving out to the IoT sort of world.
That would be ideal.
And that combination of, okay, this thing is enterprise grade, no question about it, and it's like the fastest platform you can get for current generation hardware. That's a really nice thing to aspire to deliver.
Oh, absolutely. So I know my co-host Ryan's wish list is to have kernel and Mesa updates as fast as possible, and I know that that's not necessarily practical in a
Do you know about Arkham?
Arkham? No, I don't.
Arkham's like I think it's a Batman. Story, right? Like that.
Yeah.
I think
Arkham
that's
Asylum.
Where exactly, right? Yeah. So Arkham is an Ubuntu flavor. So we call it, the Ubuntu source. It's all of the patches that make the Ubuntu kernel work with, everything out there, applied to every single upstream kernel release. So you can, you can get an Arkham 6.5, an Arkham 6.6, an Arkham 6.7, an Arkham 6.8. So if you really want to live maybe in the loony bin, then you can get essentially everything that we would put into an LTS kernel or the HWE kernel, the interim release kernels, but you can get it on literally any upstream kernel you like. So
that's awesome.
Okay, there you go. I don't know if anyone can do better than that, right? It's
I like how you described it as the loony bin, and it's named Arkham. I love that that's a fantastic name. So I kind of want to go as like a little bit of an abstract question. We talked about it in DL a little bit, and I'm curious about, there was an AI panel today, and some like machine learning sort of stuff. And I was curious, has your view changed or been modified over the past? Because AI has been moving so fast.
Yeah.
We had an interview with you on the show like 6 months ago. So I'm just curious, has there been any kind of movement on that? What do you feel like AI works with Canonical?
I don't remember exactly what I said, but I generally I think the world would be a better place for our ability to understand data. I don't think we can take that for granted. I mean, I think it's pretty clear that we've seen in social media that these algorithms and the feeling that can be created that something alien knows you better than you know yourself, right? Did you mean this in one case, or here's a bunch of social media that's going to keep you scrolling? Those things can be pretty dark. But if I think of the potential for improving people's lives, right? Whether it's in health, whether it's in society, whether it's in education, whether it's in government services, I think that potential is enormous. So generally, I think full speed ahead is the right answer, right? Like you won't stop other people from going full speed ahead. So better try enable people with perhaps positive goals and values to be at least as far down the curve as people with other agendas. And the other big controversy that I see is this question about copyright and machine learning. I think learning is not the same as copying. You know what I mean? Like I think if I've read all of a great author's books, it's going to be, and I'm passionate about them, it's going to be almost impossible for me not to embrace some elements of that writing in my own writing, and we would never say that that's copyright infringement.
That's true.
Right? Yeah. So I think there is something about the act of publishing, which is a gift, right? And sometimes people get all technical about that and says fair use and so on. And I understand the need for lawyers and judges, but I think there's this deep principle that learning isn't copying. Right? Go and read a bunch of stuff, and now you've internalized that. Nothing's happened in your brain that isn't happening in a machine learning context.
Yeah,
right?
That's a very interesting perspective of that, because I haven't thought of it that way. And the idea of that you read a book and then you inherently just accidentally copy it. Because
you have been changed, right? Like we talk about how a work of art moves us, changes us, right? We talk about how we read a book and it changed us, but we learn stuff, and that's not copying, right? So.
For sure. I mean, that's a very interesting perspective. And so as the founder of Canonical, I'm curious, because you've seen the open source move and Linux ecosystem move in a variety of ways for a long period of time. And I was just curious, how would you give, like, what kind of advice you would give to someone who wants to become part of the community and become a contributor, and how they can get involved in open source? Because it has become a little bit of, I wouldn't say convoluted, but something slightly less harsh as that, but not far off.
Well, I mean, just think how GitHub has changed the act of fixing a piece of software. Do you know what I mean? Like, you used to have to go and find out where to download it from, and then you had to unpack it, and then you had to figure out who you had to email, and then you had to get into a conversation. So now you just click on the thing, say like, make a branch. Yep. Make a PR, and you're done. So I'm not sure I agree that it's become more convoluted to contribute to open source, right?
In some cases,
I think open source has become a much bigger thing, and in a sense that's to the benefit of all of us, right?
Oh yeah.
Imagine you growing up and you're really, really interested in something over there that's really niche. If there's open source there, now suddenly you can become a contributor in the thing that you're really passionate about.
Sure.
I think sometimes open source went through a kind of a pinch point where really there was a lot of concentrated focus on like the desktop, right? Remember the year of the Linux desktop thing, and it was a huge thing that attracted a lot of attention and therefore a lot of contribution. And there's a certain crowd that say, oh well, it's just not the same in distribution land anymore. But we shouldn't forget that the reason for that is because there is just now so much that talent can be applied to, right? And I think that's great. I think that's better. I don't feel that,
I guess when I said call it convoluted, I meant it's become so well established that open source is now becoming part of like almost every company, and they're just everywhere. And then you have situations of people using open source that are not actually open, and people, it might be a little confusing. That's what I guess that's where I was going for.
Right, I see. Okay. Well, look, it's always been a little bit true, right? It's normal that for every 1,000 users of a piece of open source, you might get one person sending you a patch, right?
Sure.
So it has always been a gift, right?
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit like you shouldn't ever go into a casino not planning to lose money.
That's true. That's true.
You shouldn't ever go in other than to say, look, instead of going to the movies with my $20, I'm going to, So, and it's a little bit like you shouldn't ever give to open source without being willing to see other people using that and not necessarily sending you something back, right? Like it is a gift, right? And sometimes I think, understandably, I've felt this, you feel like, you know what I mean? Like we do so much, is it too much to ask? But really, that's part of the satisfaction, right? Like you do. I think the fact that we now have significant corporate adoption and contribution to open source is part of what's amazing in the last 10 years, right? Like we've got giant industrial players who will say, okay, let's put 200 engineers on some new thing that's going to change our industry for all of us and all of our competitors. Sure. Not just in tech, right? Not just in tech, in finance, in logistics, and I just think that's great. If you believed in open source not just as a counter culture, something to poke at big companies, if you believed it as something to move the world forward, how much bigger is the lever when it's moving, it's accelerating things we all use every day.
Yeah.
Right. So I can only think of that as a good thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. I agree completely. Yeah. You've changed my mind about that. So I don't really consider it necessarily convoluted anymore. This episode of Destination Linux is sponsored by LINBIT. LINBIT has been keeping digital businesses running for over 20 years. They're the makers of open source products like DRBD, which is high availability software that has been part of the Linux kernel since 2010, and LINSTOR, industry-leading open source software-defined storage. LINBIT has an active presence in the open source community, and they collaborate with the community to help identify and build new features. LINBIT provides enterprise-grade software that runs on a variety of platforms and OSs without vendor lock-in. What that means is that you could choose the software on any platform, including specific hardware that you want to use, or just off-the-shelf hardware that you get and connect it. All of this stuff can be interchanged really easily. And with DRBD and LINSTOR, you can have high-speed replicated block storage in almost any configuration, whether it's Kubernetes, Apache Cloud, or OpenNebula. There's even DRBD proxy for long-distance replication. LINBIT is run by its founders to this day, and all of its engineers and developers are in-house with offices in Europe and North America, which allows them to have global 24/7 support to complement their enterprise offerings. Visit linbit.com to learn more about the people behind LINBIT and the awesome software for block storage, duplication, and more. I also am curious, you mentioned the year of the desktop, and that's a joke that's been around for, I don't even remember how long. But let's say, because Linux has dominated everything other than the desktop, what do you feel like is maybe something that could be done, maybe the top 3 things you think, or maybe even just if there is one thing that you think that maybe you could push that threshold over and actually meet that possibility?
I'm not sure if this is a good idea, but you asked, so I'm going to tell you. Like sometimes I sort of feel like, oh man, it's so obvious what we need to do. Let's just go and do that. And of course, nobody agrees. So you got to. But this one, you know what I mean. I have a view, right? And the view is that we need to accept leadership. Do you know what I mean? So there is a kind of a constant way in which I think we end up kind of watering down the notion of the free software desktop, right? By fragmenting it and fragmenting it, fragmenting it again. And arguably it's like the XKCD thing, right? Well, I'm going to say that the answer to this, complete incoherent set of standards is yet another standard.
Right.
But I see us do things where we say, there's a major push, for example, to replace the windowing system. But if you challenge the people doing that, well, what is it supposed to behave like? They'll say, oh no, we're just a protocol. Right? And
exactly.
And so you say, well, okay, now I know exactly what's going to happen. What's going to happen is exactly what happened based on X, which had the same statement effectively. And so the net effect then is that if you're publishing an application into that ecosystem, you have no real idea how you can make a great experience, because it's going to depend entirely where it lands, right? And that's a very difficult thing to talk about, because intrinsically, here, there's something beautiful about the idea that everybody can get different stuff. And so how do you find commonality that's tight enough that allows somebody who's publishing an application to not worry so much if you're using it on this desktop or that desktop, but it also allows enough freedom for people to explore different kinds of desktop, right? That's a hard problem. I've always found that it requires unpopular leadership, right? Sure. Make a case for, a little bit of controversy in the Reddits and the whatnots of the world, right? Like, if you don't see that, I guarantee you're going to see nothing interesting coming out of it. But it also requires some sort of taste in trying to find that balance between, what are you going to lock down? What are you going to say, like, this is it, right? And then how are you going to do justice to the idea that there can be a lot of creativity on the other side of that, right? How do you balance those things? That's an interesting and hard problem.
Oh yeah.
Maybe now we're kind of getting our desktop mojo back. We can join that conversation again.
Yeah, I would like to see that for sure. I think that it already is there, because you were talking about essentially, if you're not getting any hate, you're not doing something right. That's
a dangerous thing to say, right? Because it's what a nasty autocrat would say. They'd say, well, obviously I'm doing something right because people are standing up against me, right?
Okay.
And so it's true, right? It's exactly true. I mean, like, we don't have to go too far to find current examples. So you can't, it's like when people say something really nasty, they say, oh, I'm just being honest. And it's like, well, you're just saying what's in your head. That's not quite the same. That doesn't make it virtuous. Do you know what I mean? But yes, I would say, if you have very good intentions and you're trying really hard to balance stuff, but you're determined to make something which is going to solve some of these problems, it will be controversial, like, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So I have a couple more questions. The first thing is about the summit itself. So I had a fantastic time. Last year was great. This year was even better. I think there was twice as many people this time.
Well, we have fantastic local community, right? So there's a chunk of people here, Latvian community, Latvian open source.
I met quite a few.
Did a bunch of the work in pulling the event together and came out in force. So that was lovely to see.
That's awesome. I met many people from Latvia that was like people who were in the developers already and people who were students. And it was really interesting, discussions and things. And I'm curious, what would you say, like, what would be like if you could change just, something to be like a perfect event, what would you want for next year to be, how would you want the summit to be next year?
Well, I don't want this summit, it's called the Ubuntu Summit, but I don't want it to feel like that to be here, Ubuntu has to be the biggest thing for you. I actually think the open source leadership voice is what is fascinating, right? So people doing things way away from Ubuntu are super interesting to bring together. So I hope we can continue to expand our reach and bring together leaders, people who are breaking things and making things that may have nothing to do with Ubuntu at all. Inevitably, because Ubuntu's very popular, very widely used, inevitably, if you're doing stuff in open source, unless it's very specifically not in Ubuntu. If it's essentially software that could be in Ubuntu, you'll have a lot of people from the Ubuntu world touching it and interacting with it, right? So how can we make that experience nice for the leaders, the makers, the creators, the publishers, as well as consumers, right? That's stuff that's interesting to me. But I really want to feel like this is a place where we talk about the future of open source and how we make it better, for both the creators, the publishers, the inventors, the leaders, the upstreams, and for people who just want to use it. Clearly, in this forum, we're thinking about the pipes that are Ubuntu pipes, right? Because those are the things we can change. But I don't want the summit itself to become just an Ubuntu event.
Yeah, I could sense that from last year. It felt like that because it was also the first year. But this year there was so many different talks.
This year that was a real change. Yeah. I saw people who are doing groundbreaking things in open source, has nothing to do with Ubuntu, and getting them here challenges the Ubuntu community and the Canonical team to say, well, that stuff is amazing, and people really want it. How are we going to connect that? How are we going to make it really easy?
Yeah, that's awesome. There was a talk multiple talks from DreamWorks.
Yep.
I was not expecting to see a DreamWorks talk, and as soon as I saw the timetable, okay, that is favored. I favored it. I'm going to make sure I see that one. But there's a lot of things I think about the Ubuntu Summit that's not really widely known about it, because everybody sees it as the Ubuntu conference, and I feel like it's much more than that. It's much more than just the open source part. It's the community around the summit is actually amazing, because I don't know how. Maybe it just happens this way, or I don't know. Maybe it's something to do with it.
I don't know what we could do to kind of slightly distance it from Ubuntu. We could call it the Canonical Summit. That would perhaps set expectations the wrong way. But if we actually delivered on that more open source story, that could get a reputation, right?
Yeah. I think that even the name Ubuntu is such a wonderful choice, because it's exactly what it's intended to be. The whole the Linux for Human Beings original slogans kind of thing. It fits so well that I think that the Ubuntu Summit really, if you could apply it to that side too. It doesn't have to be just about the operating system. It could be also about the philosophy into. So I like the name, and I think that people should just kind of, maybe we can do more promotional aspects of expressing it's both the philosophy and the distro as well. But so for Ubuntu and the Canonical, and it's been around since 2004, making Linux for human beings. And a lot of people, including most everyone here that I've talked to, said that they either started with Ubuntu or came back to Linux because of Ubuntu. And it's become the synonymous example of this is a distribution that pretty much anybody can get started with, and it's the easy way to get into Linux. What would you, if you could choose something else in addition to that to be known for in the next 5 years for Ubuntu, what would that be?
Very clearly, it's important to us that people believe that it is the platform they can run their businesses on. There are huge businesses now that literally do run on Ubuntu, but to have that be widely understood, widely acted on, obviously that is important for Canonical, and through Canonical, for us to keep growing our reach and our expanding our scope in open source, right? So that enterprise story is kind of critical. I think the desktop, again, like blazing a trail on the desktop. I don't want to speak for that team, but I think they've spoken pretty clearly for themselves, right? Like you talked about 2310, right? There's a bit of a declaration of intent there.
Yeah.
So that would be satisfying to see that. And then I do think there are these two incredibly challenging worlds where people try to use open source at scale. One is the cloud world, which isn't just public clouds. It's all distributed systems. How do we make that really easy for people? How can we make it so that it is really easy to spin up a complex topology of stuff running on bare metal, stuff running in VMs, stuff running on Kubernetes, all woven together, and then just be able to say, at scale, highly available, and do that kind of before you've finished coffee in the morning, and then say, I can just leave that for the next 10 years. Do you know what I mean? Like it'll take traffic and it'll get updated, and if something dies, it'll get fixed. That's a crazy ambitious dream, right? Yeah. And if you think that most of the pieces in that would be pure open source pieces, for sure, and then there'd be the things that people are writing for themselves, that would be a great thing to do for open source. I mean, if all of those pieces are there in open source, but it is literally impossible to stand it up and walk away and have it still be there in 12 years' time, then that open source is not kind of delivering everything it could deliver. Right?
Yeah. I think.
So that's this one hairy, ambitious, crazy goal. That's really the Juju story. That's what we're trying to do with Juju and with Charms. And you start to see the pieces falling into place there. And then the other end of the spectrum, you have, okay, so people are now making incredible things that are super smart. Like you can afford to put, if you've got an electronic dog flap, you can afford to put 4 cores, 2 gig of RAM, a camera, and you can do incredible stuff with that with open source software. Yeah. So how do we make that easy? How do we make that safe? How do we make it so that you can then sell that dog flap in every country where they have legal requirements that you either use this crypto or you do security updates for a certain amount of time, or how do we make that easy, right? How do we make it straightforward? In both cases, there's business goals, right? No one's going to stand up and write complex topologies of cloud software, for personal reasons, right? Yeah. And similarly, if you're making a dog flap, it's pretty much, if you're not a tinkerer, maker, then it's to sell it. But those are important things to support. Open source should be making that more and more accessible, more and more possible. Mm-hmm. I'd love to crack those problems.
Right? I like that. Yeah. That would be fantastic. I do have a quick follow-up with that. What is a dog flap?
A dog flap. Do you have dogs?
Yes.
Okay. So we have dogs, and we live on a farm, and so the dogs have their own door.
Oh, that. Yeah.
And the door, because we live in a farm in a place that can be cold, wet, and windy all at the same time, we used to have a dog flap, which was literally just a flap.
Right.
The problem is the wind would open the flap.
Oh, yeah.
And so this caused some sort of domestic confusion. So we got an electric dog flap, which basically, when a dog comes up to it, it opens the door so the dog can come through, and then it closes the door. So
nice. Okay.
But it's not very smart.
Gotcha.
I think the next dog flap that I buy,
it's censoring to see if it's the right dog.
That sort of thing, for example, speak, friend, and enter. Yeah. So.
So I have a couple more. I'm not sure if you remember, but at the end of Zestylation Linux, we typically do a lightning round of fun questions. And we have some more for you. These are different questions, but same kind of style. First of all, cheeseburger versus pizza.
Cheeseburger.
That was a quick decision. I like it. Okay. So the next one is Emacs and Vim. Vim. Okay. Also very quick with that one.
I have no idea how to use Emacs. I've specialized very early.
So the next one is tabs versus spaces.
Ooh.
I know that's a controversial one.
I think we screwed this up in the Python community because it's clearly spaces, but it should have been tabs.
Yeah. I prefer to use tabs to inject spaces. That way I can do both.
Yeah. Here we go. I'm circling the drain.
Of course. Also, Marvel versus DC.
Marvel.
And I guess the last one would be coffee or tea.
Coffee.
Oh, okay. That was a little surprising to me.
No, coffee.
Yeah. Good. Thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it. And I hopefully be able to see you next year at the next Ubuntu Summit, because this was fantastic, and I just expect greater things in the next year too. So thank you so much for joining.
Nice to see you again.
Yeah, thank you.
Do you ever wonder what kind of games AI will create? Are you worried AI is going to replace game developers for good? Well, check out MrBid, an AI-generated game, and judge for yourself.
It's probably terrible, right?
Yes. So this game is available to play via web browser or as an awesome flat pack. It's basically the graphics of Modern Warfare 3 with the playability of Diablo 4. Yeah, right.
I was exaggerating a little bit there.
Yeah. But if you're worried your game development years are numbered, check it out and realize AI still has a very long way to go. And in this game, you can have fun bonking ghosts on their heads with a candy cane in a very surreal first person shooter. I mean, a surreal first person bonker.
Oh, look at that. Jill, why are you adding in the dad joke things in there? Like,
Yeah,
Well
you're
done.
taking on too much, Michael, there.
Well done. I appreciate the dad jokes when it's not just me, because
Yeah.
it shows how valuable they are. And also, it
To
shows
society.
that it shows to society just how much joy you can have from a terrible joke.
Yeah.
So good, you know?
Michael's
So
rubbing
good.
off on me.
That's
Also, this
unfortunate.
reminds me of a thing where this one rapper said that he loves this game because, his name was Ghost Malone. And so,
Ghost
that's not
Malone
Yeah,
loves
that's-
this because, oh my gosh, man. I need to go work out. Jill, do you have something in the software spotlight that might help me?
yes,
Absolutely.
go help the gym bro.
Absolutely, Ryan. So we had Vincent write us in a prior episode about calorie trackers that are open source. Well,
Mhm.
this week, our spotlight is an exercise timer that is open source. This is
Nice.
awesome. If you're getting into fitness at home and want to track your workouts, check this app out. It's available once again as an awesome flat pack. Exercise Timer is a simple utility to conduct interval training. Following a short preparation period, a prescribed number of exercise sets are played, and in between each exercise, there is a resting period, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And there's so many cool features of the exercise timer. You can save and recall presets containing the number of sets and the duration of the exercise and rest periods. Set the duration of the preparation in the settings. And a beeping sound is played at minus and prior to each transition. And the volume of the sound can be adjusted. And there's light and dark mode, which
Very
follows
important.
the system settings. And that's very important to all of us here
Yes.
on Destination Linux.
If you don't make it
Absolutely.
dark mode, you're dead to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, believe me, I agree with that statement 100%. Like, I can't deal with the blindingness of a non-dark mode these days.
Yeah, especially when you're on one app and it's dark and then you switch to the other app and it's
Oh.
not.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
the worst.
It is
I've
worst.
actually already used this app because I often like to ride my exercise bike and then
Yeah.
I do stretches. So I do a series of stretches before I get on my bike, a pause, and then get on the bike and ride and then get off
Nice.
it and do more stretches because it really helps my muscles.
Yeah, the interval training really help you out a lot, and it's
Yeah.
a lot of perfect settings that you need for home gyms, or heck, even if you go to the gym and you
Yeah.
install it on something, you can run it there.
Our tip of the week this week is going to give you solutions for finding alternatives to various different applications. You could refer to it as an alternative to, because that's what it's called. Alternativeto.net is a website that you put in whatever application you're looking for, and it gives you alternatives. In addition to that, it gives you various different ranking systems based on people's voting and also comments to let you know if there's any change happening with the application or if the application that is listed as an alternative is deprecated or whatever. It's a fantastic website that has over 115,000 apps in the database and also this alternatives for that. It also has ranks from over 1.7 million users, which shows you that there's a lot of opinions out there. And there's also a lot of really good applications this way because you can specify the platform you want. So you can go to it and look for an alternative and then say, I only want alternatives for Linux. And it makes it much easier to find them. You can even classify it by open source if you want to as well. Really cool. This is a great site that you should probably have it bookmarked. I have a bookmarked and I have it specially set up so that when I push the AT or just, I also made it A2 on my keyboard and then push space, you can do like a quick shortcut in your, basically every browser has custom keywords you can attach to your search engines in your browser. And this is so good that I've had this in my custom search engines for probably 10 years at this point. It's very good. So check it out, alternativeto.net.
We have some exciting news to share with you that we are going to be at Scale 2024. It's coming. It's right around the corner, March 14th
Around the corner.
through the 17th.
I mean, it's actually over 3 months away.
Right around the corner.
Wait, no, now it's actually it's still 3 months away because
Yeah.
Right around the corner.
Right
Okay,
around the
much.
corner.
Right around the quarter.
Right around the corner.
Right around the
Pasadena Convention Center in Pasadena, California. Why do you want to be there? Well, number one, there's going to be awesome vendors, all that stuff, but especially Jill. Especially Jill's going to be there.
But don't
Michael's
send us
going to be
messages that says especially Jill, but
Yes.
but Jill will especially be there.
She will especially be
Aw.
there with her penguin hat. That's how you'll find her. And then you have to come talk to Michael and me first to gain entry to talk to Jill. That's how it works.
Exactly.
To show us respect, and then we decide.
We put her in a booth that is surrounded by plexiglass, so you can see her, but you can't talk to her unless we open the door. Just saying. All right.
Yeah, that's how it works at scale.
Now we've got that settled. The guidelines are set. All right.
Yeah. We'll see you there at scale. And a big thank you to each and every one of you for supporting us by watching or listening. However you do it, we love your faces. Come join us on the Discord. Go to tuxdigital.com/Discord. And you know what? You could talk about all kinds of topics there. You already have something in common with everyone. You love this show, especially Jill. So you can go talk to all those rooms. You can go in there and say, hey, I love Jill. And that's your conversation starter.
We should have a room in there that says especially Jill.
Especially Jill. Everyone would just move to that room and all the other rooms would
at
be
all
empty,
times.
so.
No one will be leaving any other room. Yeah,
exactly.
Oh.
So we won't do that. But we've got games, movies, whatever, board games, whatever you want to talk about, Linux, open source, general conversation. It's all there available. Go check it out.
Absolutely. And we also have a special section for our patron rooms inside the Discord server where you get information about new episodes that are coming out and what we're going to be talking about, who we're going to have on our show, the interviews we're going to have, all this sort of stuff. You can get all of that by becoming a patron and going to tuxdigital.com/membership. In addition, you can also watch the show live as it is being recorded and join us for a patron-only post show that happens every week after the show. And if you can't make it to the show, you can also get unedited versions of the show and so much more. All of this at tuxdigital.com/membership. And you're going to get so many great perks that we don't even have time to list them all. So just go there and check it out. Also, if you want to help support the show, you can get some swag from our store at tuxdigital.com/store. We have hats, mugs, t-shirts, hoodies, stickers, and so much more. tuxdigital.com/store.
And make sure to check out all the amazing shows here on Tux Digital. That's right. We have an entire network of shows to fill your entire week with awesome geeky goodness. Check out our virtual Linux user group, Linux Saloon. You can watch it live most Saturdays or participate and join in the discussion. The choice is yours, but you can meet all kinds of awesome Linux and open source enthusiasts. And everyone head to tuxdigital.com and subscribe to all our great shows. And don't forget to leave a rating on your favorite app so others can discover the power of open source and keep those penguins marching in the full Monty of Linux and open source awesome sauce.
Everybody have a great week. And remember, the journey itself is just as important as the destination.
Thanks, everyone.